Relax, sis. We've got the money, right, Sarah? What are you talking about? She's got $100,000 in savings, so don't worry. Sarah, we're counting on you. No. My name is Sarah. I'm a 34-year-old office worker, and I've been married to my husband, Sean, for 10 years. We had our daughter shortly after we got married, so she'll be turning 10 this year. While I don't have any major complaints about my marriage, I do have some issues, particularly concerning money. My husband has a habit of spending excessively on his hobbies. It's not the amount that's the problem, but the frequency and lack of restraint. I insist that he contribute a minimum amount to the household finances, which covers most of our basic expenses like utilities and food. With the limited amount he provides, I've had to cut back on spending and cover rent, our daughter's school tuition, and save for her future education from my salary. That's where my financial dissatisfaction comes from. Another issue is the housework. Despite both of us working, Sean doesn't contribute to household chores. He often claims that if he does it, it'll take longer, using that as an excuse to avoid it. This has led to me handling all the housework on my own. When our daughter was born, Sean was reluctant to help with her care, fearing he might accidentally hurt her. So I ended up managing most of the parenting responsibilities as well. As I reflected on my marriage, I realized that I was quite dissatisfied with my husband. Despite this, we had been together for 10 years, and our daughter was growing up. I knew it wouldn't be wise to consider divorce, especially with her approaching puberty. I tried to convince myself that no marriage is perfect and that disagreements are part of any relationship. However, a recent event made me reconsider. The catalyst was my sister-in-law. One day, she showed up at my doorstep unexpectedly. Sarah, I'm really sorry, but I need to hide out here for a while. What's going on? I've had some trouble with my husband. Can I stay here for a bit? What happened with Ken? She didn't answer directly and kept avoiding the question. Her vague responses only deepened my concern and made me question everything. I wasn't convinced by her vague explanations, so I decided to wait for my husband to come home from work. He arrived around 8 p.m., and after we had put our daughter to bed, we all sat down for a conversation. My sister-in-law, my husband, and I. So what happened? I asked my sister-in-law. Ken suddenly snapped and told me he wants a divorce. What? I was shocked. Ken had always seemed like a sincere man, so the idea of him suddenly getting angry and asking for a divorce was surprising. Do you know why Ken got so angry? Why are you asking me that? I just find it hard to believe he gets so upset without a reason, I replied. I noticed my sister-in-law seemed anxious, which only made me more curious. Sarah, why have you been defending Ken all this time? Are you involved with him in some way? Of course not, I said, trying to stay calm. I doubt it, my husband interjected with a laugh. She doesn't have time for that, and besides, she always leaves her phone on the table. Though my husband's defense was meant to reassure me, it only added to my irritation. I was too busy with work, house chores, and raising the kids to have much time for my phone. I rushed to make dinner after work, barely glancing at my phone. In the end, my sister-in-law couldn't provide a clear reason for her husband's behavior, so my husband and I decided to speak with Ken directly. When Ken arrived at our house, my sister-in-law chose to stay away to avoid the awkwardness. Ken greeted us with a polite apology. I'm really sorry for causing you both so much trouble. I had always known him to be sincere and level-headed, so his sudden anger was surprising. Ken, why did you ask for a divorce? You've only been married for a year. Isn't that a bit extreme? There must be a reason. Ken explained. She spent all my money without my permission. Really? How much did you have saved? I asked, stunned. $50,000, Ken replied. My husband and I exchanged surprised glances. $50,000 in just 1 year. That's roughly $4,100 a month. Considering that Ken had been providing enough money from his income to cover living and other necessary expenses, it was baffling to think of such a large sum being spent. It turned out my sister-in-law had been using the money for her own entertainment. Given the situation, it was understandable why Ken was furious. Anyone in his position would be, and I could relate. It would be challenging to stay married to someone with such a reckless spending habit. Are you okay? I asked, noticing Ken's frustration. Yeah, I'm fine, Ken replied. I thought about my own husband's spending issues. It seemed clear that financial habits might run in the family. If she doesn't pay back the $50,000, you should consider divorcing her. You don't have kids, so it might be a good idea. As I nodded in agreement, my husband abruptly said, "Okay, I'll make sure my sister pays you back." I was taken aback by his certainty and didn't quite understand where his confidence came from. Ken, however, simply said, "I'd appreciate that." With the conversation settled, I decided to observe how things would unfold. After Ken left, my sister-in-law returned home. "What did he say?" I asked her. "He said I spent all his savings, $50,000. Oh, I used it for living expenses." I tried to explain to him, but he didn't understand. But Ken said he had a separate account for living expenses. My sister-in-law snapped. "You don't know anything, so just stay out of it," she added harshly. She had always had a tendency to belittle me. Honestly, I agreed with Ken. If my sister-in-law couldn't manage her finances responsibly, perhaps divorce was the best option. Ken had made it clear he would only forgive her if she paid back the $50,000. "How can I possibly pay that back? I'm just a housewife," she protested. "If you can't pay it back, then don't spend his money," I said firmly. "Well, sis, relax," my husband interjected. "We've got money, right, Sarah?" "What?" "She's got $100,000 in her savings, so don't worry." My sister-in-law's eyes widened with interest. "Sarah, how come you didn't tell me about this sooner?" I was taken aback. "Wait a minute. How did you know about my savings scene?" "That money was something I set aside for my future when I was single. After I got married and had a baby, I intended to use it for our daughter's tuition. I never mentioned it to you. I found out about it when I went to your parents' house," Scene explained. The revelation left me in a state of confusion and frustration. "It was in the second drawer of the closet in your room," Scene said. "You went through my things without my permission? That's unbelievable. We're married, for God's sake. Anyway, your sister-in-law is in trouble, so we need your savings." "What are you talking about? I'm not giving it to you. That money is for our daughter's education. There's no way I'm handing over $100,000 just like that." "You've got $100,000, so give her $50,000. "Huh? Then why don't you pay her instead?" "Whoever has it should pay." "Sarah, please help me. I'm in the middle of a divorce." "That's none of my business. It's all your fault." "That's terrible. You don't love your family. Love for you means money. Then I don't need that kind of family love. If you don't give me $50,000, I'll divorce you," Scene declared, pulling out the divorce papers from the drawer. "Oh, so you've been preparing for this?" "I had them ready in case something happened." "You've got a lot of nerve trying to get your way." "That's exactly what I want to say to you," Scene retorted, filling out the form. "I'm serious. We can divorce at any time." My sister-in-law grinned as she watched the confrontation unfold. "Well, I'll be one of your witnesses," my sister-in-law said, signing the form with a smirk. "You can either pay me $50,000 or get a divorce," she added. I was baffled by how they thought they could intimidate me. I decided to play along and let the moment pass. The next day, I brought my in-laws and Ken to my house. "Why are you here, Ken? And Mom and Dad, what's going on?" I asked. "We heard the whole story," Ken said. "Scene, don't embarrass yourself," his mother advised. "Sarah, I'm truly sorry about my foolish son and daughter," his father said. "Ken, we also owe you an apology," I said. "Why are you apologizing?" My sister-in-law snapped. "Shut up," her mother said sharply. "We went through your room and found a lot of brown bags and jewelry." "How did you find out?" I asked, stunned. "Ken asked me to look into it," she explained. "You've always had a habit of hiding things you bought from us since you were a child." "I can't stay married to you after you lied about using the money for living expenses," Ken said. "I want you to pay back the $50,000 and get a divorce." "Oh no," my sister-in-law protested. "And Scene, you'll be getting a divorce too," Ken added. "What?" Scene exclaimed. "Sarah already filled out the divorce papers and I signed as a witness. We've already submitted them," Ken said firmly. "What? I won't allow this," Scene shouted. "Won't allow it? What are you talking about? You threatened divorce and demanded that someone who has nothing to do with this take on the debt. You're disgusting," Ken said angrily. "Sarah is my wife, not your property," he continued. "She's not born into your family. She's a stranger to you, and you should have more respect and care for her." When my parents-in-law confronted my husband with a solid argument, he hung his head, unable to respond. My sister-in-law seemed completely overwhelmed and just stood there silent. Thanks to my parents-in-law's intervention, the conversation went smoothly for both Ken and me, and we were able to finalize the divorce without any issues. My sister-in-law sold as many brand-name goods as she could, managing to pay back about $20,000. The remaining balance was covered by my parents-in-law, and she now has to repay them. Under their supervision, she works from morning till night in an effort to settle her debt. As for my ex-husband, I've requested child support. I heard that he now lives alone in a cheaper apartment, but his salary barely covers the rent, living expenses, and child support. Despite moving to a less expensive place, his habit of spending recklessly means he's always broke and has no savings.